Nathan here with Back to the Frame Rate, here to tell you about an upcoming event that not only are we ecstatic about, but we think you'll be too. We're about to reach our 100th episode, and we want to celebrate it with our friends and fans. So come on out to the Back to the Frame Rate 100th episode spectacular, where we're screening the 1999 sci-fi comedy classic Galaxy Quest, followed by the actual recording of our 100th podcast in front of you, a live studio audience where we'll have a ton of fun talking about the film, but the most important aspect is you. We need you there to share your opinions, your stories, and your questions so that you are part of the podcast recording and thus part of podcast history. This is a completely free event. All ages are welcome. We've got special guests lined up, prizes to give out, and free popcorn, snacks, and water. So come on down Friday night, January 10th, 6 to 10 p.m. at the Weston Art and Innovation Center in Weston, Massachusetts. Geek out with us and make our 100th episode one to remember.
In the dying embers of human existence, as the asteroid, a behemoth the size of Texas, hurtles relentlessly toward Earth, the world braces for an apocalyptic end. Deep beneath the bunker, a refuge plunges into the bowels of the earth. Here the chosen gather, their purpose clear, to preserve the very soul of our civilization. The 35 and 70mm prints that encapsulate the magic, the emotion, and the dreams of generations past. These masterpieces, each frame a testament to the human spirit, are carefully cataloged and cradled in the cavernous confines of the bunker. Perhaps there was room for more, for friends and family yearning for salvation, but sacrifices must be made. The movie nerds stand united, the keepers of a flame, promising a future where the art of storytelling endures, transcending the boundaries of time and space. God help us all.
Welcome to Back to the Frame Rate, part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. Join us as we watch and discuss films on VOD and streaming platforms, deliberating on whether each one is worthy of salvation or destined for destruction in the face of the impending asteroid apocalypse. You can find more episodes of this podcast on backtotheframerate.com, where you can subscribe and share our show, and find us on our socials at Back to the Frame Rate. I am Nathan Shore, and accompanying me are the extraordinary movie mavens Brianna Budworth and Sam Cole. And in addition, we are delighted to welcome back to the podcast returning champion, friend, filmmaker, and film enthusiast, Christian de Rezendez. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be back.
It is no mistake that you're with us tonight, Christian, because we all know what a huge fan you are of the director of the movie that we are talking about tonight. We are reviewing The Long Goodbye from Robert Altman, and a long time ago, you showed us, I think, and some photos of your Robert Altman physical media collection, which is quite impressive. It's actually, for people watching the video of this podcast, is actually right behind you, and it is extremely impressive. Yes. So when we knew we were doing this episode, you're the first person we thought of bringing back for this. So it's a pleasure having you again, of course. So
thank you.
We're going to be reviewing this. We are going to give our ratings, our verdict on whether The Long Goodbye is going to make it into our fallout shelter, our vault, or not. And we have some movie pairings later on after this, and then some weekly highlights. Is anybody here seeing this for the first time, number one?
I saw it for the first time. I had not seen the film before.
Yeah. Is it what you expected from a Philip Marlowe story?
Not at all. It was much better than what I thought it was going to be, quite honest. Entirely different. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to read from the internet a plot synopsis.
From the internet.
Yes.
The World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web is supplying this information, so it cannot be wrong. Private Detective Philip Marlowe, played by Elliot Gould, is asked by his old buddy Terry Lennox for a ride to Mexico. He obliges, and when he gets back to Los Angeles, is questioned by police about the death of Terry's wife. Marlowe remains a suspect until it's reported that Terry has committed suicide in Mexico. Marlowe doesn't buy it, but takes a new case from a beautiful blonde Ellen Wade, who coincidentally has a past with Terry. Here is also a portion of the trailer from The Long Goodbye.
Meet Philip Marlowe.
Marlowe?
Marlowe.
Your name Marlowe?
You shouldn't be out of bed, Mr. Marlowe.
I'm not Mr. Marlowe. This is Mr. Marlowe right here.
Well, who are you?
You're Philip Marlowe.
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Elliot Gould is Philip Marlowe in Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye.
How come I horn you're supposed to get out of the way? It's okay. You're a nice dog. I didn't do nothing. Mrs. Wade.
Nina Van Palat is Eileen Wade. She's a very shady lady.
I like your face, too. I feel you're someone I can trust.
Your crazy Looney Tune husband could have killed Sylvia Lennox.
Sterling Hayden is her husband, Roger.
Why don't you call your friend the Marlboro Man in here?
It's not his business.
He's a very crazy man.
You ever think about suicide, Marlboro?
So here we go. The Long Goodbye came out on March 7th, 1973. It had two releases. I think it was originally released in Los Angeles and then much later on in New York. And we can probably talk about the reason for those two releases in a little bit. I read that it had a budget of $1.7 million. And I could not, maybe Christian, you might know, or somebody else might know, couldn't really find good hard data on what its box office take was. I saw 959,000, but who knows if that's a true number. They're really, in 1973, I don't think they were keeping track very well of.
Well, a lot of the box office for Altman films was not very high after MASH.
No.
I think in between MASH and Nashville, if you're going to look at the bookends, Nashville did a lot better because it was, received very gloriously. But everything in between was an experiment or something or other that most audiences really didn't know what to do with a lot of his work a lot of the time. So
this is Altman's 8th feature out of, I think, 36 theatrical releases, I believe is what he had. He had other, some of those were TV movies, I believe, but around there. It's some depends on how you're judging what's a release or not. Screenwriter was Leah Brackett. Yes. Cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond.
Yep.
Who also, he worked on a couple other Altman films. McCabe and Miss Miller images were two that I noticed. Also Deliverance, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was a big name in the 70s.
Heaven's Gate, The Deer Hunter.
Yeah. And composer John Williams, which is funny because really, when you think of this movie, I only think of
one song.
One song that has many different interpretations, which is part of the charm of this movie.
Yeah.
Elliot Gould, Philip Marlowe, Nina Van Palat is Ellen Wade, Sterling Hayden, who is great in this. Roger
He's
Wade,
so gruff.
Mark Rydell plays Marty Augustine. Henry Gibson, who was in several Altman films. Dr. Veringer. David Arkin is Harry. Jim Booten, who was a baseball player, played for the New York Yankees for quite some time. Also, it's Terry Lennox. And uncredited in this movie, you can't miss him, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And also,
it's his first appearance.
You might miss him. Actually, I think he played Hercules in New York before this.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yes. So. And also, you may have missed it. David Carradine plays the cellmate in a very un-David Carradine type role where he's just yapping away.
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize him until I did some reading afterwards, and I had to go back to that scene. But I just wanted to share that information. Let's talk about this movie. Okay. Christian, this is your ball wax. So where do you want to begin with this? Because I know when I asked you to be in this, you're like, really? I can't wait to be on this show. So
So again, thank you. Well, I first got into Altman big time in high school because two things happened at once. The Player came out. And everybody was fascinated by that. I'm like, okay, who's this Robert Altman guy? And at the same time, MASH, the movie, started playing on Encore. So those two things happened simultaneously. And both of those, I would say even MASH in particular, really just changed my view of cinema. And then I just became more and more fascinated by him, and I needed to learn much more about him. So along the way, I started to learn about his filmography, and then this Hollywood Mavericks documentary came out in 1990, 91, and it was one thing after the other. I eventually got to Long Goodbye, probably I was 18 or 19, and I had to just check it out. And the thing that fascinated me about it at first was the cinematography by Vilmos Zsigmond. It was one of the early collaborations of Zsigmond that really made Zsigmond stand out. What he did was a technique that there have been documentaries done about this, but the way he flashed the film to get a certain look, he flashed the negative.
It's very sun-drenched looking.
It is very sun-drenched looking. It's very hazy. The movements are very interesting in the way he moves throughout, the story.
And
the
this
camera,
flashing is something they also did in McCabe and Miss Miller, I believe, as well.
correct, which was before this.
Yeah.
Which was, I believe, 2 years before this.
Yeah.
And so in between was a movie called Images, which feels more like Altman doing a Bergman film, but those are the three. And then after this film, Zsigmond's rate or price went up, and he had to, and his productions couldn't afford him anymore. But those are the real things. The camera is always moving in this, almost always, except when it's not, when it's stationary in a car or something. And even then it feels like, what are you doing to me? And the camera's always moving. The one thing about this film, if you see it over and over again, you have to remember everybody is always lying to him.
Oh my God. This is one of my points as well.
Yeah.
There's only two people I feel like that are being honest and truthful in this, and it is Marlowe and the cat.
Marlowe and the cat, and maybe even the cellmate where he's just David Carradine, where he's just rambling on.
Yeah. And
I
I
love that
think
scene.
maybe Marty Augustine as well, but he's a sociopath.
Yeah. And Mark Rydell ended up being one of a great director too. He ended up directing on Golden Pond and For the Boys with Bette Midler years later. So he had a stellar career as well. He went on to do that. And he plays one of the nastiest villains I've ever seen in a movie.
The violence in this movie when it happens is shocking, and that it doesn't feel out of place. It's not startling in the whoa, this doesn't belong here way, but it's such a languid pace film to then all of a sudden have this explosive violence, as opposed to the seedy underground kind of the crime that you don't really see. It's jarring.
I always thought, the girlfriend that got the Coke bottle to the face, I always thought that was when I saw Batman, or like the Nicholson Batman with the girl that got the face thing. And then all of a sudden, I always felt that Batman stole it from The Long Goodbye. I'm probably wrong on that. But that always made me think of that little.
It's cartoonish. It's very,
To your comment too about the camera movement, Christian, I had not seen this film before. This is the first time I saw it. I'm a fan of Robert Altman. There's a lot of his movies I haven't seen. So I just came into this film watching it blank. And I would argue that for me, storytelling is equally as important, if not more so, than the story itself. I will watch any genre. It's about how it's told. Robert Altman's visual style was energized, engaging, and it brought me in immediately, and it held my attention. We have watched some other decent quality film noir films, but his directing in this movie, the opening shot where you see the little poster in his room that says Hollywood, and it pans over to him asleep. I knew at that moment that I was going to love this film because I was engaged. And his directing, there's so many tropes that standard directors fall into where we must get the plot across to you. But Altman focuses on character first. So we first meet Elliot Gould, like half asleep in his clothes, and his cat is jumping on his bed. And I thought to myself, here's a character. I'm already engaged. The hook was cinematic directing right there.
I thought of you. Oh, sorry. I just have to say I thought of you, Sam, because Christian, we've done Clute and Night Moves, and they're very static from a camera perspective.
Well, Alan Bakula was always static, but
yeah. So just to come into this, I did think of you, Sam, because I was like, oh, this is so much more engaging than what we've watched so far from that perspective.
Absolutely.
And that opening's perfect.
The thing that you really made me think about, Sam, that I wanted to point out, the Hollywood song bookends this movie.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I think that because that's Altman, I mean, I just mentioned The Player a moment ago. The Player, Altman's trajectory throughout Hollywood is like, everybody's lying to me. So, and not only is everybody in the story lying to Marlowe, but everybody at one point or another has lied to Altman in Hollywood. So I feel like he's making this larger statement, even though this takes place in LA, he's making this larger statement about Hollywood as a whole in 1973. And of course, the system being the way it was then, he was just getting away with it. So I feel like there's this larger context there about his career and where he was at that
And there's
point.
a lot of layers to that as well, because the song that's used, I'm blanking on who sings it, but it's also a reference to like 1930s film, that the era that song came from, which is a reference to like the early noir period, an era that also saved the film industry back then. With it put studios on the map. It's making an ironic commentary, because the film has a very jaded view of Hollywood and modern life. And after the music fades away, it's just this very stark contrast as we end up, with Philip Marlowe in a very unglamorous apartment.
He's really a man out of time.
It is.
He's
really
Marlowe
is the tagline for this. And then you mentioned the bookending of this, and we might as well talk about that for a moment. No, let's talk about the end after. We'll talk about how that music is so important at the end of this, because it is something to mention. But let's jump to the end when we get to the end, because the music is important for that.
But can we talk for a second about the characterization of Marlowe in this? Because up to this point, we had Humphrey Bogart and film noir, and everybody, there's that look. And here's this guy, and he's like, what do you want? He's like the Keith Richards, Philip Marlowe almost.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And people are like, what are you doing? And so everything that Altman did by this point was he was just trying to bastardize what the traditions were and challenge the norms. It's like, what if I make Marlowe this guy? He's almost like the Big Lebowski gumshoe, if you think about him. Except he
owes everything to this movie.
Yeah,
it did a lot of it.
It's also, I found him wildly humorous. Like, this movie has
funny.
genuine.
It's a baby shoe. That's my favorite line. What is this? It's a baby shoe.
It has comedy in it, but it's appropriate comedy to the tone. But somehow the comedy for me offsets it in a way that this movie does not feel in any way pretentious or kind of, in love with itself or stoic. It's so fast and loose. And the dialogue is hilarious. I laughed out loud. And I can't mimic the line because I've only seen it once, but when Elliot Gould is in the cell and the guy on the bunk bed is talking to him, and Elliot Gould is bored out of his mind, and the look on his face is, get me the hell out of here. And the guy's like, did you know that blah, blah? And he's like, oh, is that right? And his face is just being,
when he's exiting the cell, he goes, remember, you're not in here. It's just your body.
Your body.
I want to just circle back, just when you talked about Marlowe's muttering. I think it's more than that, because in classic noir, a staple of the genre was narration or voiceover. Often in the first person, telling the audience what's going through their head as the protagonist. And I love that in The Long Goodbye, that's really been replaced by Marlowe muttering away to himself. That's what we're getting instead. And it's a much more grounded approach, because I think what it means is that it's probably saying, Marlowe's saying what we're thinking in these situations. If a real detective, probably if we were in his shoes and we're encountering these things, we probably would be kind of talking to ourselves and muttering these things. And it's a very more natural way of going about this, instead of the artifice of a narrator telling, like, it's Friday 7:30 and I'm going to see Mrs. So and so. And it gives him that spontaneity, because his muttering is often him just reacting to a situation, and that's really damn funny as well. Yeah. So then we get the great line, "It's all right with me," constantly coming in.
I agree. I think there's a lot of connections with this Marlowe to the other Marlowes that we've seen. It's clearly a satire on the genre, I think, and it's this man out of time. But I do think you are seeing the germ of the Marlowe character. This is the youngest Philip Marlowe that we see on screen. This is the youngest he's going to be. Yeah. So there is this thing, if you think about it, where you can see how his character grows into the Humphrey Bogart, who grows in this person who wears loyalty as an armor, this something laissez-faire to something hard-nosed. There's this clever without being smug. He's gritty. Like, these seeds of the character are still very present, but it's in this much younger, less affected way, which I thought was kind of fun. And you can either see that as a chronological thing, or you can see that as this is someone from the 40s who's out of time, misplaced, and reacting to the disconnect in the 70s. So I think however you want to read that work.
I like the way you just put that. Yeah.
I also found his character really likable. I mean,
likable.
I liked him, and he himself was almost amused. There was certainly no fourth wall breaking, but as he's walking around, it's almost like he's like, look at these characters. I live at this apartment. There's these crazy, what about this movie's kind of cool? Like, what's going on around here? I'm going to have another cigarette. Like, I just enjoyed him.
And people can't stop staring at the women out, like his neighbors, the women who are over there. They're always
who could?
Yeah,
who could?
He doesn't need to look though. It doesn't even register
Yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
By the way, I love how the gangsters, the cops are like infatuated with what's going on across the way. And there's a great line by, I think it's Harry, when he comes to visit him and he talks about the women. I have to drop this one clip in here because it's the only clip I did capture because it is kind of funny.
Okay.
Morning, Harry. Have a good night.
Hey, Marlowe. Hey, you know those girls that live next door to you? You know what I think? I think they're a couple of lesbians. That's what I think.
Yeah, what makes you say that?
Well, look at them up there doing all those contortions together and with no clothes on.
Oh, they're just doing yoga.
What?
Yoga. I don't know what it is, but it's yoga.
Yeah, what do they do for a living?
They dip candles.
What?
Yeah, they got a cute little shop over on Hollywood Boulevard. They dip them and sell them.
I can remember when people just had jobs.
Yeah. Listen, Harry, in case you lose me in traffic, this is the address where I'm going. You
Thank
look
you.
great. Harry, I would straighten your tie a bit.
Yeah.
Harry, I'm proud to have you following me.
Oh, thank you.
That scene cracked me up most of the whole movie.
Yeah. The subtle one, I mentioned it before, is when the two cops are in his room at one point. He's like, what do you call this? And he holds up like a bronze adult shoe and he goes, it's a baby shoe. And then the cop just looks at him and just puts it down.
Are baby shoes, is that a drug reference?
No, baby shoes, they used to like bronze them.
Yeah.
Or
My brother had one of those. Yeah.
I have them too. They're
Yeah.
My baby shoes were like bronzed or something.
Right around that scene when it's like a few moments afterward when he's being tailed by the guy and Elliot Gould is trying to slow him down. So he talks to the security guard who does all the actors' imitations. And I can't remember which imitation that he picks.
Barbara Stanwyck. It's Barbara Stanwyck, and then it's, oh my God.
Oh, is it Jimmy Stewart?
Jimmy Stewart.
It was Jimmy Stewart, but there was another one that he did that was an older guy, and clearly the guy following Elliot Gould,
Harry Grant,
has no idea what he's talking about, and he's looking at him like, what the hell are you doing? I had a belly laugh at that moment because he's like, what are you doing?
We mentioned at the beginning, everybody's lying to him in some way, shape, or form. So that security guard is trying to not be a security guard. Even the scene when Marlowe's being questioned near the beginning and the two cops are, circling him and he's putting the shoe polish on his face and at one point the cop and there's a black cop and then there's a detective and they're watching him through the mirror. He's like, he's a cutie pie, Lieutenant. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Well, why don't you learn how to say what you mean? And then the detective leaves and goes in there. And the cop says something to himself like, he's the cutie pie. You're the smart ass, you little honky bastard, or whatever he says. That's right. And so that sets that up too. Like that person's everybody's lying throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
You can't trust anything. One scene that stands out to me too, that's interesting, is the entire film, except for one scene, is told through all of what Marlowe experiences. And the one scene that's not is the argument between the couple when they tell him to go out. She goes to go out, and Vilmos Zsigmond kept him in the shot by showing the reflection and him trying to deal with the waves crashing on the shore, while Sterling Hayden and Nina Van Pallant are having the argument inside. And I thought that was a very interesting choice. Yeah.
I love how much of this movie is through something else, through, greenery or trees or through a window, or it really lends itself to what you're talking about, which is you're only seeing part of this. There's something that's obscured here that you're not in on. And it does start with that original sin with Terry coming in and telling that big lie.
He was a famous football player at the time. He's still alive, from what I believe.
Oh, Terry,
I don't know what team he was
baseball
on.
player.
Baseball player, sorry.
And he played for the Yankees up until
did,
about
okay.
1971. Then he was out of the game for a while. Then he made a comeback in his late 30s and pitched a season. I actually looked this up because I was really curious.
Yeah.
He had 2 fantastic seasons. Was on a World Series winning team in '62 with the Yankees, and then went back to the World Series in '63. Did not win it, but yeah, he had 2 like almost like Cy Young caliber seasons with the Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I could go on and on about this movie. I love it so much.
We were talking about just the characterization of Marlowe, and I think that this movie takes a lot of time, and we're talking about the beginning of this a lot, but it takes a lot of time just with Marlowe in his cat. And I think this is worth talking about because it's important, because I always wonder, like, why are we spending all this time with Marlowe and the cat? And it really has nothing to do with anything at all. But it really is a great setup for why he is who he is and why and how he interacts with Terry afterwards. And it took me a couple watches. I've seen this now, I think 3 times. And it really is a metaphor in a way, showing us the absurd lengths that Marlowe will go for a friend. And it does reveal him as a kinder, gentler version of this character who's historically portrayed as a classic noir detective. And he's patient and he's committed to something, even if it's extremely trivial. And it shows that he's loyal and principled. And so when he helps out Terry without really any questions asked, he's really following the same moral code. And because it always bothered me, like, why is he, even though he's friends with Terry, we never really see him questioning like what happened, and we never see the conversation down to Mexico, and that always rubbed me the wrong way. Like, we never really got that, but it kind of makes sense that he would be like, sure, I'll help you out, whatever, and because he would do it for his cat, he'd do it for his friend.
And so then when you get to the ending, which I don't want to, jump ahead on that, well, you talked about shocking violence for a moment there. And, there's a very similar shot. Well, not, I think similar in shock, but McCabe and Mrs. Miller has a very shocking scene with violence that comes out of nowhere. And it's a similar thing here. But what happens at the end of The Long Goodbye is that it completely contrasts what you just described, Nate. Like, he's going to do anything for his cat, anything for his buddy. Okay, you need a ride to Tijuana. Okay, I won't question it because that's loyalty. But then he gets to the end and he does something that is, frankly, a bit uncharacteristic of what he's done for the entire film.
Have you all seen Under the Silver Lake?
Oh, I love Under the Silver Lake.
No, I haven't seen
it. It's a newer movie. It's like 2010s. I don't know the exact year, but it's relatively new.
18 or so, yeah.
Yeah, and it feels kind of like a new Hollywood version of this, but it's that thing of things are happening to the character. He's sort of stumbling through, and there's a lot of circumstance because he's just a magnet for this type of activity. And then eventually there's this boiling point where there's so much happening where he's like, wait a minute, am I supposed to be piecing this together? I think I might be part of the solution here, and eventually puts it together. This is a certain archetype that we see through a few different films, and I love that Marlowe has become this in this iteration of the character.
I've got to give that movie a chance. I've been aware of Under the Silver Lake, and I think I have an unfair bias that has nothing to do with the film because I lived in Silver Lake. And there's something about the movie to me that looked like this self-aware hipster, like, aren't we cool for telling
it kind of is.
And I think, I found that off-putting, but I cannot overstate. I have not seen the film. I cannot judge it, and I may not know what I'm talking about. But I've had the opportunity to see that movie, and I haven't done it yet because
the first time I saw it, I really hated it.
Yeah,
but it is a movie that kind of sticks in your craw, whether or not you like it.
If those are your concerns and trepidations, Sam, it could rub you that way. But it also, I don't know.
I'm sure it's really good. It just I'm definitely aware of the only reason I haven't seen it. Yeah.
So just to move ahead here a little bit on the plot, I have to raise my hand here and say one thing. I love everything about this movie, what Altman is doing. I get lost though, and I get there's a very convoluted plot that develops a little bit in the middle of this movie. And I understand what goes on here because I went back and I read a lot about it, but I do not think it's very clear the roles that some of these characters are doing. How Marty Augustine is involved in this, how his friend the Wades are involved, and how the Lennoxes are involved. There is a lot of machinations going on here, and I get that maybe that's not the point, and it is about Marlowe and the mood, and I take it at that value. I love this movie, but if I'm looking for story and like the B plot A go to B to C to D, I'm like,
the movie for that.
What the hell is going on here? There's money. There's $350,000 that's being thrown around. There's another $5,000 that's being thrown around. People owe money. Who owes money? I don't know who owes money. It is convoluted. So
who's sleeping with who?
I'm throwing that out there, and this frustrates me about this movie. As much as I love so much of the style of this and the performances, I'm so frustrated with that aspect of this.
I completely understand where you're coming from on that. And I think as a whole, Altman did not like anything too straightforward. He didn't like everything to be filled in or spoon-fed, and he liked a lot of murkiness. And that is clear in his best films. I can't think of a film that he did where you're spoon-fed something, and even if it gets preachy or didactic, like Health does and other films that he did later, and the murkier he was, the better the movie. And so I completely understand it from a trying to put pieces together thing, because I honestly didn't get any of it until much later after several viewings. What I totally clicked with was the movement, the feel of it, the mood of it, the characters, and just observing the behavior of all these people. And then later on, you can just kind of put it together the more and more you see it. And so to me, that's the hook. That's the pull in. If you get into the plot of who did what, where, and how, it's like,
I felt
in a weird way that's less interesting.
And I get that. And Sam, I'll let you talk in a second. I get that, Christian. And I can sit through like Three Women or Quintet, which I don't think is a good movie, but still get what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's because we are in a detective movie, and I love the style of this, and I love the direction of this, and I love everything going on here. It's still kind of breaking my brain that why can't I just follow along a detective mystery plot easily?
I think with the plot of this movie, interestingly, although because I've only seen it once, so there's a lot that I didn't understand, but I always understood Elliot Gould's motivation. And that actually helped me, why he went where he did, who he was talking to. And like you were saying, because of the dynamic camera moves, even though I was not sure always who was related to what, I felt like there was this kind of not necessarily guiding momentum, but there was a sort of forward motion force to the storytelling that with the character's behavior that helped guide me. Whereas some other film noir movies that we've seen that does not have Robert Altman's direction, that some of those, and I won't say anything specific, but not only am I not visually guided, but I'm spending time in scenes where I don't even know who to follow, and I feel completely lost. With this movie, I always felt anchored by Elliot Gould, and I was experiencing his journey as it unfolded around him, which helped me a lot.
It's a good take.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can I add one little thing in here real quick? I saw an interview years ago with Elvis Mitchell. Elvis Mitchell was interviewing Robert Altman after he made Gosford Park. And he was like, well, why did you make Gosford Park? And Altman's back in there. He goes, well, I never did a whodunit. And I always kind of wanted to do a whodunit. So we got together and did it. And Elvis Mitchell looked at him and said, so what's the long goodbye? And then Altman was like, oh, yeah, okay. And because to him, but that told me two things. He never perceived of it as a whodunit. And is it really a whodunit? So to go along with, because a whodunit, you're like, okay, what are the details, right? So, Altman adds all these layers and like a big painting to the point where you don't even think that it's a whodunit anymore.
I actually think this is a movie. I've watched it twice now. I interpret it often as a movie about death, but not about the killer or the cause of death. And that to me would be more of a whodunit.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. That's okay with me.
It's all right with you.
It's kind of reveals an ending indirectly. It's kind of a cynical comment, but one really messed up interpretation. It's about a guy who's been lied to and lied to and lied to and lied to. Then he finally has the courage to shoot someone.
Yeah.
And you're like,
That's
yeah.
Really, I mean, you want to talk about the ending? That's really how I perceive it as well, because it does seem like it's out of character that he does blow his buddy Terry away. But honestly, it is the most cathartic thing in the movie for me, because he has been just lied to the whole time. And it's that release. It's a great release of frustration.
Again, this is where I see the seed of the Marlowe character becoming something from bemused to hard-nosed, though, because here's someone who finally was like, you know what, this is against my moral code. His moral code has pushed him through the whole film.
Oh my God, The Long Goodbye is a prequel to The Big Sleep. We just didn't know it.
That's the thing. I was surprised though how cathartic it was, because usually something like that, my first impulse is, oh my God, I don't know how to feel. And I was so thrilled in that moment. To me, that was like a climactic ending, like that made I love the whole movie, but that addition when he shoots him, then he walks down the street and he starts dancing, and then the Hollywood song plays. I was like,
it's rejoiceful.
I was like, yes, perfect.
You get the harmonica.
Yeah.
And Nina von Plant's driving, and she's like, he completely ignores Nina von Plant in the Jeep.
Yes.
He knows, and he's just like, no.
And I was so happy for that ending, because having no idea what was coming, I thought we might end up with this ambiguous ending where his car breaks down and you just see him standing around in the sunset. And we just watched 2 weeks ago, we watched Night Moves, and it's a great movie, but there's this ambiguous dark ending. So to have a cathartic moment in this movie just solidified it for me.
It's so nice, because so many of these noirs and film noirs, the hero doesn't usually have a happy ending. It really usually ends bad for them. And it's so nice. This guy deserves to have his day.
That's true.
I mean, we haven't really talked about some of the side characters before we wrap this up here and take a break. But Nina von Plant in general, any thoughts on her? Because my first thought was she's really good. Not the typical femme fatale as well. Very typical, because she's not, no, say this the wrong way. She's not the classically beautiful type like Barbara Stanwyck, Veronica Lake, Lauren Bacall type for these types of movies. She has that kind of like average, everyday California girl.
Girl Next Door.
Which I really liked. So
she's 88 years old.
She's 88 now.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Wow.
No, she's 92. She's 92.
I found her like beautiful in this movie. I think
she's in Quintet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really liked the dynamic of her and her husband, and it was sort of a little bit of a flashback to Night Moves. Here's this couple, go find someone, but I don't. It was just, I really like the dynamic that they brought to it.
I believe she's in 4 of his films. She's in a wedding. She's in O.C. and Stiggs.
Yep.
And so she's in the more obscure films of his. But yeah, I mean, I think she's fine in this. Everybody knows Sterling Hayden from Dr. Strangelove too.
I love him from The Killing. That's where and of course,
Oh yeah.
The Godfather. A lot of people know him from that as well. Is very memorable scene from that. Elliot Gould, 86. He has always wanted to reprise this role, have a sequel to this. It's never happened. As recently as a year ago, he actually went on the record asking if Steven Soderbergh would do this.
I was just going to say Steven Soderbergh would be perfect for it.
His relationship from the Ocean's movies.
No, here's a director I think would be perfect for this.
Yep.
Because his camera movements have mocked many of Altman's in tone. And now I know this is obscure because he's a director that I think should be praised for the few films that he's done much more.
Tom Shadyac?
No, Tom Shadyac. Yeah. Yeah. Ed Wood is next. Yeah. No, Oren Moverman. So Oren Moverman, who did The Messenger with Woody Harrelson. He did Rampart also with Woody Harrelson. He did The Dinner with Richard Gere and Steve Coogan and Laura Linney. He also did a brilliant movie called Time Out of Mind, in which Richard Gere and Ben Vereen play two homeless people. The films he's done in the last 10 years have been stellar. Okay. And I think he got an Oscar nomination for a screenplay on Messenger. But it's like he almost feels like he's a bastard son of Robert Altman. So I think like he would be the perfect guy to do it. Yep. If Elliot Gould wanted to reprise it at 86 years old.
At 86, I mean, even if something were to happen, he's going to be pushing 90. Do you see it? Would you even want to see Gould in his late 80s reprising?
Pushing 90. When did movies
I think they should open it with him on the couch with the same damn cat. 50-something years later.
By the way,
they should open it with him on a train where he's de-aged and he's chasing.
No.
When did movies start to take so long to make? He'll be pushing 90. When did that happen? When did we need 7 years to make a movie?
By the way, you mentioned the cat. You know the cat was played by Morris the Cat, famous for 9 Lives commercials.
Really?
Yes.
I thought he
had a
famous.
career. Had a big career, Morris the Cat.
It's good for Morris.
Yeah. One thing that I got a kick out of with the music, in the opening title sequence, every scene he walks into, it's like it's the same song, but it keeps changing to a different type genre. Like he walks in the supermarket and it's the Muzak version.
Yeah.
Right.
In Mexico, it's a mariachi version.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going. Yeah.
The doorbell at the Wades is also a version of the song.
Is it really? I missed that totally.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's all over this movie. And think about how cheap it was to all they had to do was buy one song and just keep reinterpreting it.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the budget was 1.7 million. It just reminded me of the De Palma story where he was telling everybody that Carrie was going to cost 1.8 million. And they're like, no, we're not going to give it to you for that. It's 1.6. And so finally it was like, okay, they threatened to fire him. It was 1.6. And then De Palma's like, and of course it cost 1.8. So, but I mean, just to have that kind of a budget back then, like, 1.7, like now you had like, how much was Dial of Destiny, for Christ's sake?
Oh,
I mean,
300.
300.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like so stupid,
It wasn't good.
It wasn't, it had issues.
Yeah.
This is such I'm just being like comedic here for the one, in every film, there's insert shots that are filmed afterwards. And I love this movie and I'm half joking because it didn't bother me. I just noticed it. But at the very end, when Elliot Gould goes to Mexico and he's in the police car and he wants to know where the guy really is.
Yeah, he has the money.
He's handing him the money. There's a shot looking down where clearly like they've got lights going by the window. They're shaking the car in place.
Yeah.
They're like, we needed the shot where he gives him the money. And it's like that afterthought, like insert shot. And I just saw that. I was like, but I mean, it was not a problem. I just noticed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the dialogue in that scene is really funny too. I think that's the most outright funny dialogue for the longest period.
Yeah.
We just filled the coffin with stones. Are you trying to bribe us? Well, we've seen a Madison before.
Yeah, James Madison. Yeah.
We've met Mr. Madison before.
Yeah.
We've got that long car ride, all the shots of the town. I love the dialogue. It's great. Yeah.
I know.
You mentioned something about the side characters. Henry Gibson was in a number of Altman films, most notably Nashville. I believe he's in Popeye. He's in Long Goodbye. He's in all these others. And so that's why when Paul Thomas Anderson did Magnolia, which was a love letter to shortcuts, that's why he stuck Henry Gibson in there.
But he'll always be the Klopex from the Burbs for me.
I think of him as the supermarket manager in Inner Space, which is a very unsung movie. But
Nathan, I love the Burbs. I always think of the same thing. And I have to say, I had no idea that Arnold Schwarzenegger had a brief moment in this film. That surprised me. And the best possible way. It was so distracting because in 2024, he is such a megawatt star that just to see him sitting in the background and not talking. I also know I can see why he was cast, because they have a scene where they have to take their shirts off, and he's clearly so ripped that I just pictured you as like, I have no problem doing this. You know, I'm so much more pumped up than all of these little men. Like I can hit. But it was so funny because he's such a huge star now. But when people saw him in that film, it's almost kind of like, this is a terrible example, but the film with Michael Douglas, The American President, when Martin Sheen is the chief of staff, but it was before The West Wing. And so Martin Sheen is the side character, but he's the president in The West Wing, which is a much more famous show. So you feel the lack of balance in the scene. Oh my God, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's just sitting around in the background. So I think
when you look at Schwarzenegger and everybody else in that scene, he could just beat all of them up very quickly.
Exactly.
So he's working for Rydell, and Rydell, like Marty Augustine.
Yeah.
Augustine is the one,
way overqualified. He's gonna usurp that position.
I've never heard him talk about that movie in interviews. Like, I wonder if he had a good experience.
He does not acknowledge it at all.
Yeah, he never does. It's strange. Yeah.
What were you going to say, B? Sorry, you just.
Oh, no, I was just going to. Are we all just binging the first season of The West Wing just to feel something right now? Is that what we're doing? That's fine.
I will take Martin Sheen as president.
Yeah.
I will take a dead Twinkie as president.
Yeah. For listeners,
I'll take Terry Crews from Idiocracy.
Oh, man. And Mountain Dew. Yeah. Nathan, so this is your second time. You just did your big Altman retrospective.
I did. I finished it about a month ago.
And you were like a little cooler on this movie than you wanted to be. You were like, I just want this to click more.
I actually did pull up my rating on this, and I'm going to be shamed when I say this, that I gave The Long Goodbye, the last time I watched this, 3 out of 5 stars.
Well, you've been wrong before.
I have.
You know?
I don't dislike it, but I think my hangups back then are still my hangups now. But watching it this time, I really vibed with it a lot more because I wasn't watching it probably as casually. And there's a lot to love in this movie. There is. It did not even make my top 10 Altman movies. When I did it, it probably would move up now, but I will save my new rating.
Has this shamelessly,
even though it wasn't directed by Robert Altman, you had to leave room for Gremlins 2 at the top. That's why.
That's which is horrific. God, what's wrong with you? You call yourself an American.
I will defend Gremlins 2 until the death. Yeah.
Sam's on a one-man mission to get us to do Gremlins 2 on this podcast.
You don't even have to do it on the podcast. I'm just going to send it to you guys for Christmas and be like, just watch it. You don't even have to do it on the podcast.
I'm waiting for my DVD to show up in the mail, Sam.
I'm waiting for my VHS, actually. So Sam, I want to see its original pure form.
I will simply say it makes fun of sequels. The movie doesn't take itself seriously. That's why it's brilliant. You're missing out. I stand by Gremlins 2 forever.
This goes back to the summer of 1990 when I was working at the Golden Camp that you were at, Sam.
I was there.
Matt and I went to see Gremlins 2. I hated it. He loved it. We were going back into camp the next day. We probably talked to you about it.
You did, and I'm sure I was very enthusiastic and as articulate as I am now.
Yes.
Put Gizmo on American money is where we're at.
Completely.
All right. Shall we take a break and come back with our final thoughts?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
All right.
Is this your homework, Larry? Is this your homework, Larry?
Look, man.
Please. Is this your homework, Larry?
Just ask him about the car, man.
Is this yours, Larry? Is this your homework, Larry?
Is that your car out front?
Is this your homework, Larry?
We know it's his fucking homework. Where's the fucking money, you little brat?
Look, Larry, have you ever heard of Vietnam?
Oh, for
You're
Christ's
entering a
sake,
world of
Walter.
pain, son. We know that this is your homework. We know that you stole a car.
And the fucking money.
And the fucking money. And we know that this is your
We're
homework.
gonna cut your dick off, Larry.
You're killing your father, Larry. All right. This is pointless. Okay? It's time for Plan B.
Thank you to everyone who has tuned into our podcast. If you're enjoying it, please hit the subscribe button to get new episodes in your feed every week. We don't have a big budget for paid advertising or really any budget at all. So we rely on you, our listeners, to help us spread the word. The best way to support us is by sharing our podcast with friends or posting it on your socials. You can find us at backtotheframerate.com and follow us at Back to the Frame Rate on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. Lastly, we'd be incredibly grateful if you just left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We thank you for your support. Okay, we're going to get to our final thoughts, our ratings, and our vault decision on whether The Long Goodbye is going to be saved or purged into the fiery apocalypse, never to be watched or heard from again. We are going to start with Christian, our guest, with your final thoughts on this film.
All right, so this will kind of give you an idea of where I am with my final thoughts. Here's my Laserdisc that I purchased in 1994 that I could probably still play on my player. Okay.
You have an actual Laserdisc player.
Well, that's why.
functions.
Well, wouldn't I need a player?
I don't know. Maybe you just collect them and just hoard them. I don't know.
I don't
right there, Christian. That was a
still-
perfect opportunity for the facial expression that you do on Facebook. That like wouldn't I need a player? Yeah, there you go.
I don't know.
There you go. So, of course, I upgraded. I later had the DVD and the Blu-ray and so yes, it belongs in the vault.
What would be your rating for this from 1 to 5?
5.
5. Okay.
It's okay
Sam.
with me.
Yeah. Sam, what do you say?
Okay with you?
I think this movie I will definitely enjoy it with repeat viewings, but I solidly enjoyed this movie. I would give it a strong 4 stars because it just delivered so much for me upon one viewing, knowing very little about it. The fact that I just had that connectivity to it immediately meant a lot to me. So 4 stars, yes to the vault, no question. Elliot Gould's performance, the tonality, love the movie. I really enjoyed it, and I surprised myself. I was not expecting to dislike it. I just was not expecting to respond to it as strongly as I did. So 2 thumbs up over here.
You can't do 2 thumbs up. We don't have that copyright.
Quote, 2 thumbs up in quotations. I do not own the copyright of that. Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Siskel, Mr. Ebert.
All in one.
I think this is a brilliant reimagining of the Raymond Chandler hardboiled detective Philip Marlowe for the 1970s. Gould, portrays Marlowe, a man out of time, 40s, private eye, essentially woken up in 1970s Los Angeles, and he's muttering his way through this. I love the catchphrase, "It's all right with me." I think that's what he says.
Yeah.
And it just subverts noir conventions while paying homage to them, which is really just a wonderful blend.
Some magic act.
And yeah, so like I said, I was lukewarm in this movie the first 2 times I've seen this. This one was definitely a really much more enjoyable time watching this. However, I am still hung up a lot on the plot machinations of this convoluted second half. It becomes labyrinthian somewhat, particularly in clarifying the connections with the gangster Marty Augustine, his criminal enterprise, and the intertwining relationships with the Wades, the Lennoxes, $350,000, another $5,000, who's sleeping with who. It's very murky, word that you brought up, Christian. What's going on here? But Gould's is so charismatic in this. And Sam, what you said before, if you kind of just hitch your wagon to what he is doing, it's all right by me. So I am going to give this still, it was a 3 before. I'm giving it a 3.5 just because I want more from this. This movie is just this close to being the perfect movie. And I want it to be better, but I'm going to say put it in the vault.
Nathan, I totally respect that. And because of what you just said, I now think you are qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. So great job.
Because I host a show. That's all you have to do.
Zinger!
You just have to host a show.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
Everything's depressing.
Sean Hannity is going to be his press secretary.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Yeah. Or Loomer, or whatever her name is.
Folks,
Lunatic.
we do wear our politics on our sleeves here.
I could not resist. Oh. That was just low-hanging fruit is your favorite term, Nathan. That's it.
Oh.
B.
Yes. Yeah. Man, this series has really turned out to be a dudes rock movie series for B. This is my wheelhouse. Apparently, I love these. I've been having so much fun in this genre and with these characters. It's not a secret. I love the dissonance of this Marlowe character and the world that he's in. I love the hazy obfuscation that surrounds him. I love the meandering way that he stumbles into success and trials and tribulations and sex and drugs and cats. It's wonderful. I totally charmed by his shamelessly rumpled demeanor. His ability to turn any surface in the world into something he can strike a match on is just pure magic. And
we mentioned how this movie is brought to you by lung cancer and Lucky Strike.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That is now.
Yeah. But he
now
made it
Secretary of the FDA.
So far, so yeah.
Yeah, this movie does walk that perfect line of thumbing its nose at the 30s and 40s and what came before it, while also really doing a beautiful nod to it and understanding that it's walking in that path. So for me, this is an easy 4.5. Yes, it should be in the vault. I think it's wonderful. I'd be happy to watch it with you anytime in the apocalypse, which might be real soon. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Give it about 6 months.
Yeah.
All right, let's put it in.
Yeah.
It is so.
I feel like that should be followed by Bill Hader's imitation of Alan Alda. Like, that is just great. That is just terrific. I'm so glad you guys picked that movie. That is just great.
Okay, it is time for our next segment, which is going to be Movie Pairings, where we will make a double feature with The Long Goodbye.
Hello, welcome to Masterpiece Video. How may I help you this afternoon, sir?
I'm looking for a copy of 8.5.
Is that a new release, sir?
No, it's the classic Italian film.
Yes, sir. Just check that on the computer for you, sir. Hello, how are you young ladies this afternoon? May I help you find a particular masterpiece movie?
No.
Yes, here it is. 9.5 weeks with Mickey Rourke. That would be in the erotic drama section.
No, not 9.5, 8.5. The Fellini film.
How about this one? Get it? I'm sure it sucks. All these movies suck.
All right, time for some movie pairings. Is everyone ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. What do we have tonight? That's going to be a great double feature with The Long Goodbye. We're going to start with our special guest tonight, Christian.
Well, it took me about half a minute to realize what this should be paired with. Now, a little while earlier, you said that we've talked a lot about the murkiness of this and things not being clear. And if there's one movie that comes from close to this era that is about a gumshoe that is fairly similar, that has so much murkiness in a plot that it took me 4 times to watch it to figure out what the hell was going on. It's Inherent Vice by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that movie.
Because I watched the first time I was watching Inherent Vice, I loved it, but I couldn't tell you what the hell happened. I really couldn't. And that's because for the same reasons that Anderson, who loved Altman and who has paid many homages to him across his films, from Magnolia to Punch Drunk Love, here it's like he embraces the same, I'm following this guy, I'm on this trip following this guy, we are explaining it to you as we go. And in Inherent Vice, there's way more characters in this than in Long Goodbye, to the point where you don't even, it's almost like it's a mad Long Goodbye. That it's a bit longer. It's about about 35 minutes longer, something like that. But it's just as interesting. It's very spot on. So for me, it's clearly Inherent Vice.
One thing leads to another, and we pretty much started shooting up together on a regular basis. Then along comes Little Amethyst. I don't know if you have the stomach for it, but this is what we had her looking like. Everybody helpfully pointed out how the heroin was actually coming through my breast milk, but who could afford formula, you know? It's a long way from where we are now.
Ashamed to say, I have still not caught up with Inherent Vice.
Oh, it's really good. And it's a really good book too, Nathan. Yeah.
Martin Short has a great scene in that movie.
Yeah.
I got to catch up with it. I will soon. Streaming on Max, and you can find it on VOD. So yeah. Up next is Sam.
So I had a bit of a tough time this one because The Long Goodbye is such a specific vibe of a movie. This movie is very different. It's not the same caliber, and I'm cheating a little bit just because Elliot Gould is in it. It is certainly not a film noir, but I am going to pick as, if you're watching these two films in the evening, you start with Long Goodbye, and then my second pairing would be Ocean's 13, because the Al Pacino character really, really screws over Elliot Gould's character, and the movie's kind of about him. So it's a loose pairing in the sense that they both, the same actors in both movies. But I enjoy Ocean's 13 a lot because Ocean's 12 was fun, but it's so all over the map that 13 is a kind of a course correct version that goes back to the heist style film in Vegas. And it has Steven Soderbergh kind of switches up his directing style a little bit, where you are not quite as let in on the heist as you are in previous films. And it's just subtle and fun. So it's an entertaining movie. It's light, but Ocean's 13, watch it again.
Awesome.
It's a good one. I enjoy it.
I've actually not seen Ocean's 13, but Ocean's 11, I know. Ocean's 12 just was such a party to everybody. Is it fun to be together? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
We're like, what were you doing here? Okay, Ocean's 13. Like that.
That's the thing. Ocean's 12 has no form. We're all back and we got a budget and let's go to these locations.
It's like The Exorcist 2. What are we doing here?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. Yeah.
What are we doing here? It's right.
Oh boy. Flashbacks.
Yeah.
Was it, Kristen, was it you that sent me the thing that what was it? Martin, some really respectable director liked The Exorcist too.
Martin Scorsese liked
him.
The Exorcist.
My God. I think I sent you a text. I was like, Marty.
I could, but that's kind of when I found out Terrence Malick liked Zoolander. I didn't know what to do with that.
Well, Zoolander's art, so
yeah,
right. But Terrence Malick liking Zoolander. It's like when I found out that Costa Gavras and Penelope Spheres were cousins. I really am still processing that.
Terrence Malick probably loved the gas station scene in Zoolander where they're like playing with gasoline and then they light themselves on fire.
That's where he got the inspiration for his pesticide scene in Tree of Life. Okay, I'm sorry.
In a way, Tree of Life really is like Zoolander. No, I can't. They're 1-to-1. You don't see it? All right.
They're very close. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spiritually connected, those films. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think my pairing this week is Fletch. the 1985 film from director Michael
Never
Ritchie.
seen it.
I think the reason should be obvious, because despite the differences in tone, I guess Fletch owes an incredible debt to The Long Goodbye. Fletch, of course, is an irreverent comedy starring Chevy Chase as Irwin S. Fletcher, LA newspaper investigative reporter who, while undercover as a junkie, is approached by Alan Stanwyck. And I just today realized
I have
the
seen
connection in the name also,
Okay.
who offers to pay Fletch to murder him, claiming he's dying of
Mhm.
cancer and wants his family to profit from the insurance money. Both of these films are non-traditional detective stories with satirical twists on the noir genre. Oh my God, I sound like LA. Noir genre. Oh my God. In both these films, Los Angeles, plays a pivotal character as well, which I think is great. But most of all, Fletch, I feel, takes like the Philip Marlowe character and kind of sensationalizes it. And Marlowe displays, an irreverence towards authority, wealth, and Fletch, is a more cynical version of that, and he fights the corrupt system with disguises and fabrications, which isn't much of a leap from what Gould was doing as Marlowe. But Fletch is easily in my top 20 favorite films of all time. I find this so funny, so quotable. I'm constantly quoting this movie at the most inappropriate times. The amount of occasions where I'm out to eat with people from work and we're talking about how to split the bill, and I just say, charge it to the Underhills, and I get a look like I have 3 heads. Nobody seems to get it.
I saw the movie once. I don't even
Have you seen
remember
the new one? Have you seen the new one with John Hamm?
I haven't. I kind of wary about it.
It's really fun, but that's the quotable one for me. Marcia Gay Harden has this great line where Fletch asks her some like throwaway question, and Marcia Gay Harden just goes, "You bet your big cock I do," and that is said in our house all of the time.
Nice.
So, but Fletch it's on Pluto TV right now. It's on VOD. I wonder if B never seen this original 85 version.
I have seen it. I have seen it. Yeah,
Okay.
I just forgot about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've never seen this before, how it holds up, because I remember first seeing this movie back in 85. I was only 11 or so. Yeah. I didn't like it because the humor in it was not my vibe. Because it was on HBO probably all the time. This is a movie that I warmed up to probably after seeing it like 7-8 times on cable. I'm like, this is a funny movie. And it took me a long time, but like now the whole movie is like I could play in my head, and it's.
Now, how long have you had these pains, Mr. Barber?
No, that's Babar.
2 B's?
1 B. B-A-B-A-R.
That's 2.
Yeah, but not right next to each other. I thought that's what you meant.
Arnold Babar. Isn't there a children's book about an elephant named Babar?
I don't know. I don't have any.
No children?
No elephant books.
Open wide. Say no, it's an odd name. I don't recall having seen it on the club registry.
Well, I don't formally belong. I'm a guest of my aunt's.
Your aunt?
Right, Mrs. Smith.
Joan or Margaret?
Uh-huh, right.
I have to give it another shot. I have not seen it since I was a kid, really. I'll give it another.
It is.
Yeah.
I watched it running up to the new one, and it's
There's
just
a
of its
sequel
time.
to the original too. Fletch Lives.
Yeah.
Fletch Lives.
Like
not as good, but it's
The timing of when you watch it too has, like, I saw Dazed and Confused as an 8th grader, and I was bored out of my mind. It's all these, high school students are just walking around talking, like, where's the action in this movie? I saw it again as a senior in high school, and I thought it was brilliant. Like, so it just, factors. Yeah.
You talk about quotable films, just real quick. The same year as Fletch was Real Genius, which for me is one of the most quotable films. And almost also photographed by Vilmos Zsigmond.
Who's the director of that?
Martha Coolidge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
B, you're up.
I have a pretty unorthodox pick for this one, but I think
I made a chicken run a few weeks ago.
That's right, you did.
Paired with Angel Heart, so you can't beat that.
Yeah, true. My pick for this, I don't know if any of you will have seen this, but it's an anime, Cowboy Bebop.
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
It's awesome. It is a great show. It is the year's 2071, and we follow a spacecraft filled with bounty hunters. And the lead character, Spike, is based on Robert Altman in The Long Goodbye. He is a chain-smoking, laissez-faire bounty hunter, just going through the motions. And it's awesome. It was a very short-lived show, but it was great. And the movie is just like a couple of hours of the show. They're headed to Mars. It's really fun. But
so is this the show or a movie that you are recommending, or all of this?
All of the above. The movie's great. I would say just head for the movie, but the show, especially that like the first few episodes, you really get the vibe of Elliot Gould shining through in this anime character in 2071, and it does lend itself to that. He's even more out of time than ever.
So is this the show from that? From 1998, like the late 90s?
Yeah. Okay. And it's the same guy who did Animatrix. I don't know if we were all like as obsessed as I was when the Matrix series came out and Animatrix came out. It's the same director.
Very good. I'm glad that you are with us, B, to bring in the anime crowd. So
I don't know. Yeah. I know this one.
That you can double it, whatever you want. Like, and while we're going that far out, could I recommend the Star Wars Christmas special?
No.
Okay.
Great question. No,
it's not even funny.
I've actually I've never seen the whole thing, but I have seen clips and like when they're like talking to the Chewbacca's family or something. It's pretty cheap.
It is funny if you watch it with a bunch of friends. And
you're not sober.
Out of your mind.
It's like a bad movie. It's like watching The Room with a bunch of friends.
Right.
That's how you should approach it. Not as like a serious, like as part of the Star Wars canon.
Guys, can I tell you a secret? Don't tell anyone. Okay, just between us. Okay. I've never seen The Room.
See, this is what we're gonna do one night, B. We're gonna get together, all of us. Anyone else not seen The Room yet?
I've seen Disaster Artist, but I'm not.
I've seen The Room.
Whoa!
Wait. To clarify, I have seen The Room and I've seen The Disaster Artist. So just to make mark my
achieve over here.
I'm very achieved and I'm wearing a suit, so you should listen to me.
Christian, you watched The Disaster Artist, but you have not seen The Room. That just is.
There's only certain my life only has so many minutes in it.
But that's like watching the movie about.
I think what you just said describes it, though. You get a bunch of guys together to watch it.
Yes,
I just never got around with it. Sorry.
I propose we have a room watching night because this is my favorite thing to do: is introduce The Room to people who have not seen The Room.
I'm down.
I saw The Room at a screening, and I cannot believe my brain is. What's the guy's name? Steve? What's the main guy who directed and acted in The Room?
Tommy
Wiseau was there. Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, that movie is in a league of its own.
We'll take this conversation offhand because maybe that's what we should do.
I don't think Nate can handle my.
Are we just going to totally discredit ourselves when we're like,
yeah?
I'm just thinking now at our 100th episode spectacular, we should just screen The Room instead, right?
Oh God, that's a real bait and switch. Wow. If you bring people in for
we can't do that. Maybe another time. That's also an adult crowd too.
And Christian, just because you haven't seen The Room, I promise to be nice to you over the holidays if I encounter you at that pub crawl thing in Rhode Island where it's like it's a lot of fun. I actually am not joking. That was a lot of fun. I hope to do that again. You guys should come. It was just good.
I'm definitely doing it.
What was that called? Pub crawl.
12th.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to be there. Yeah.
I can actually hear our podcast listeners clicking off and going to another podcast right now. So why don't we wrap this up, or do we want to do highlights, or we should just call it?
I think we're
good. Well, this has been really wonderful. Christian, you know what? I didn't get a chance to do this. Any updates to Slatersville that you can share with us, to the few listeners that may still be with us? I want you to have a chance to give us a quick update what the series is.
The series is about it's a historical documentary. It's about the nearly 2.5 century evolution of the first mill village in the United States, which is located in North Smithfield, Rhode Island. Okay, so we have 8 episodes out. They are on Tubi. So they're on Tubi now. You can go to Tubi, type in Slatersville, and you'll see seasons 1 and 2, and there are 8 episodes across them. We are currently working on the final 3 episodes, and because this has taken so many years, we're going on year 14. I am just adding on a few new people who want to help out voluntarily, because what's happening is that now what's behind us is so large that needs help promotionally getting out there while we're still funding the final 3 episodes of the series. And so we're into new territory as we complete the series and round it out. And it's been a wonderful journey so far. So we actually figured out, because this Friday I'm presenting at the National Humanities Conference in Providence. So I was updating the PowerPoint stuff and I did all my numbers. I updated that. We've interviewed 144 people on camera and 32 have passed away. And when I looked at that, my co-producer said, wait, that's 1 in 5.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And so I was like, yeah. So it's been an educational and emotional journey, an artistic one. And, I'm excited. We're going to be having some screenings next year in Slatersville, Westerly, Walpole, and other locations.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll put information about this, any links in the show notes.
Firstmillvillage.com is the website. People want to check it out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up. And we will be back next week with the last film in our neo-noir 70s hard-boiled detective retrospective with 1974's The Yakuza from Sidney Pollack.
Wow. Okay.
And looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That is the show this week. Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. Special thanks to Brian Ellsworth for our show opening. On behalf of all of us, we bid you farewell from the Fallout Shelter. If you are enjoying our show, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Find more episodes at backtotheframerate.com and follow us on your social media platforms. And the handle is Back to the Frame Rate. Your support brightens our bunker. Until next time, stay with us. Keep hope alive, everyone, and share our show with your friends. This is the end of our transmission. Back to the Frame Rate, signing off.
I want you to know it's over.
Well, bye.